Scout was 14 years old and had never in his life passed a test on the first try, mostly because nobody had ever thought to give him one. He'd flunked out of 2 working programs before he was a year old. Too slow to track, too calm to alert, a brindle mutt with one ear that never learned to stand, and spent the next 13 years doing exactly one job, which was lying near me while I did the actual work. I'd retired him the same week I retired myself, off a border post on Calder's Reach, and neither of us had done anything more strenuous since than walk to the mailbox. He wasn't much to look at, if I'm honest about it. Medium build, brown coat gone patchy gray at the muzzle and the paws, a tail that curled a little too far to the left from an old fence jump gone wrong. Nobody had ever handed him a medal, or a mission, or a job title. He'd been a washout twice over, and then, for 13 years, he'd been the only thing in my quarters that didn't ask me anything. I'd fed him, walked him, and slept better with him on the floor by the bunk than I ever had alone, and that was the whole of our professional relationship, such as it was. So when the invitation came through, Director Talm Austin, Osari Consulate, Verge Station, requesting the presence of Sergeant Thomas Rourke, and companion for a class designation courtesy review. I figured it was paperwork. I'd been through 6 of these since the treaty opened companion travel to Osari space. They scan the dog, note his age, note his temperament, stamp a card. 20 minutes, in and out. The garden they walked us into wasn't Osari style. Too much open sky, real dirt underfoot, a low stone wall with actual moss on it. Somebody had built it to make humans comfortable, which should have told me something. In the center sat a ring of black posts about waist high, spaced in a wide circle, each one humming faint enough that Scout's ears didn't even twitch. "The recurrence loom," said the technician, a narrow, quick-moving woman named Yeska Kaur, in a voice that suggested she'd rather be doing anything else. "A standard tool. We run 5 minutes, we read the data, that's all." "You said that like there's a version where it isn't all," I said. She didn't answer that. She had Scout sit in the center of the ring. He lay down instead, because that's what a 14-year-old dog does when you ask him to sit and hold it. And she stepped back to a console and started the loom. 5 minutes, near as I could tell, of absolutely nothing. The posts glowed a little brighter. Scout's tail thumped twice against the grass, once when a bird crossed overhead, once when I shifted my weight. Then the light dropped, and Kaur frowned at her readout. The way you frown at a scale that's given you the same number 3 mornings running, and you don't trust it. "Run it again," she said, to nobody, and ran it again. Same 5 minutes. I know because I watched them happen twice, back to back, closely enough to notice the bird cross the same patch of sky both times, which the garden staff assured me later was coincidence. The drone gulls ran a fixed patrol, nothing to do with the loom, and Scout's tail thumped in the same 2 places, because a dog who spent 13 years in the same yard doesn't change his habits for an audience. Kaur ran it a 3rd time, a 4th. By the 5th, another technician had wandered over, and by the 6th, there were 4 of them standing at the console, not talking to each other, watching numbers that apparently would not move. "Problem?" I asked. "The loom reruns identical initial conditions," Kaur said, not looking up. "It is designed to surface variance, small differences in outcome that tell us what a subject will do under marginally different pressure. Every subject we have ever tested has produced variance by the 3rd run. Environmental noise alone should..." She stopped herself the way people do when they realize they're explaining something to a civilian they haven't fully explained to themselves. "He's just an old dog," I said. It wasn't an argument. It was just the fact of the thing, same as it would have been the fact of the thing an hour ago. She ran it a 7th time. I'll admit the 8th run was the one that started to feel strange to me too, not because anything changed, but because nothing did. 5 minutes of a dog breathing, a bird crossing, a tail thumping twice, over and over, and somewhere around the 8th pass I caught myself watching Kaur's face instead of Scout, because Scout wasn't giving me anything new to watch. She had the look of a woman doing long division that kept coming out to the same wrong-feeling answer, no matter how many times she carried the one. By the 9th loop, the garden had filled up some. A pair of robed clerks from the consulate proper, a security officer who didn't seem to know why he'd been called, and eventually, Director Austin himself, a tall, gray-skinned man with the kind of stillness that comes from decades of watching other people panic in his presence. Nobody said much. Scout lay in the grass and let the light hum over him and did what he'd done 9 times running, which was nothing at all. "Explain," Austin said, quietly, to Core. "The loom is malfunctioning," she said, though I could tell from her face she didn't believe it. "The loom has run 11,000 recorded trials on Verge Station alone," Austin said. "It has never malfunctioned." "Then the subject," she stopped again. I watched him look at Scout for a long moment, not at a readout, at the dog. 14 years old, gray around a muzzle that used to be all brown, one ear folded the wrong way since a puppyhood accident nobody remembered anymore, lying in alien grass under alien light, with his chin on his paws and his eyes half shut, the way he lay every evening on my porch back on the reach. "Run it again," Austin said. They ran it an 11th time. I counted, because by then, I'd started counting. The way you count anything that keeps happening exactly the same after you've stopped expecting it to. Same 5 minutes. Same bird. Same 2 thumps of the tail. Kyor's readout came back and she didn't even say anything this time. Just turned the screen so Austin could see it, and he looked at it for maybe 4 seconds before he nodded once and killed the loom himself. The posts went dark. The garden was very quiet. The kind of quiet that has more people standing in it than it did 15 minutes before. "The loom exists," Austin said. "To the room in general, but mostly, I think, to Core. To find the edge of a thing. The point where a small change produces a different result. So we know what a subject becomes under pressure. 11 trials. Identical conditions. Identical outcome. There is no edge here to find." He looked at me. "Your companion does not change, Sergeant Rourke. Not under observation, not under repetition, not under 11 controlled attempts to provoke a variance that any other creature in this Concord would have produced by the 3rd. He's old," I said, "and he's tired, and he decided how he felt about all this, about 30 years before you built that thing." Austin didn't smile. "Oh, sorry, don't. Not the way we do." But something in his shoulders eased that I recognized, because I'd seen it on human faces too, the particular relief of a man handed a simple answer after being braced for a complicated one. "Class designation, stable," he said. "No variance under sustained stimulus. File it as complete, not indeterminate. I won't have my technicians running a 15th loop against a dog for lack of imagination." Core didn't argue. She looked, if anything, glad to stop. They stamped the card. It took 40 seconds, once nobody was trying to disprove anything. Scout got up when I clipped his leash on, stretched the way old dogs stretch, front end down and back end up, and a groan in the middle of it, and walked out of that garden exactly as unhurried as he'd walked in, past 4 technicians and a director, and a security officer, who'd all just spent the better part of an hour trying to catch him being someone other than himself. Core caught up with us at the gate. She had the look of someone who wanted to ask a question and hadn't decided if it was worth the embarrassment. 11 times, she said. The same result. Every time. Didn't that feel like anything to you, watching it? I thought about that on the walk back to the transit dock, Scout limping a little on the hip that always acts up in cold air, taking his time about it, in no hurry to be anywhere he wasn't already. I thought about the 11 identical readouts, and the 4 technicians who'd stood there hoping for a 12th that would finally look different, and how none of them had thought to ask the simplest question in the room, which was what a 14-year-old dog actually had left to prove to anybody. "He's just an old dog," I told her, same as I'd told her the first time. I said it the 11th time, too. It came out exactly the same both times. That, I figured, was the whole report.